Welcome back to the channel. Ken McCallick, jazz vinyl audiophile from the streets of New York City, the mad and crazy streets of an increasingly post-apocalyptic dystopian New York City, where in one place you have high rises going up that nobody who watches this channel can afford, while the streets are alternately filled with just people who should be in an insane asylum. You know, if you go to Connecticut or parts of New Jersey or upstate New York and just drive around, you will see all these abandoned, what we used to call mental asylums from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And I think it began with good old Ronald Reagan, and then carried on by New York governors, where they'll have a much better quality of life if we just let them go to the streets and make their own way. There was a town called Newburgh in upstate New York that is right across the Hudson from all these incredibly small and prosperous towns like Poughkeepsie and Beacon and Cold Spring and Peekskill. But Newburgh is on the other side of the river. There's no mass transit there. I'm getting off. Bear with me. But in the 70s, Newburgh, which was a beautiful city in the 1900s, it was the hat-making capital of the world. It has the widest boulevard of any town or city in New York State. Well, in the 70s, when they, blew out the insane asylums, they sent many of the people who had drug problems to Newburgh, the halfway houses. Newburgh now is a Victorian slum. It's a giant ghetto in New York State. It's all very poor, from what I understand, mostly black people in the inner city, and the circumference of the city is where all the wealthy white folks live, including down on the river. Anyway, that's the state of New York City, but I wanted to talk about a few records that I'll be reviewing upcoming. I'll be comparing this to my OG, and I've got some new stuff here that I want to make you guys aware of, like this crazy Brazilian drum tutorial record that has just totally blew my mind. My buddy Paul Wells said some of this was sampled by DJ Shadow, a Graham Collier record on My Only Desire label. This is a strange one. The British musician Graham Collier. I mentioned I'm going to be reviewing the London Brew. A bunch of UK musicians doing their take on Vintage Brew, and I've checked it out, and there is some of that spirit in there, along with sort of a 70s fusion thing and a 90s electronic thing. That's pretty strange. And then a couple reissues, starting with David Axelrod, Heavy Axe. He did a lot of soundtracks. He did some interesting things. Some of it's good. Some of it sounds like dated soundtracks. Why they reissued this one, I don't know, but I'm sure I'll find out. Produced by Julian Cannonball Adderley. And then I'm reviewing this questionable recording. Bernard Purdie, Purdie Good on Top Shelf. Bernard Purdie's an incredible drummer. He played on such classics as Asia. He played on amazing songs by Aretha, including Rock Steady and Till You Come Back to Me. When I was a kid in the 70s and you heard these songs come on the radio, you could pick out Bernard Purdie from Steve Gadd, from Steve Jordan, from Jim Gordon. There were these little small differences that came through, and Bernard Purdie always had such a massive, still does, incredible groove. And this record includes Gordon Edwards on bass, Warren Daniels on tenor, Harold Weedle on electric piano, Ken Dunbar on guitar. That's almost like the cast of a lot of different mainstream jazz records. But I honestly don't know why this was reissued except for his name. His records are sort of from that era. They're not like serious records. I mean, they are, but they're also, he would put signs in front of his drums in the studio saying, Pretty Purdie, the greatest drummer in the world. So this is kind of an advertisement more than it is a record. But I haven't listened to it in a long time, so we'll see what this sounds like. Comes in a very nice sleeve. They're serious. Anyway, these are part of the Craft Jazz Top Shelf series, the second solo album from one of the best session drummers of all time. Recorded and engineered by Rudy Van Gelder, all analog mastering from the original tapes by Kevin Gray, coherent, pressed on 180 at RTI. I hope you watch. Goodbye.